833-777 now.
At the top of the hour, my buddy Chris Burns is going to swing by to talk to us about the markets. Big dives in the market on Monday and Tuesday. Right now, 10:55 a.m., the Dow is up 422 points, making up some of the losses from the last 2 days. Chris will bring us up to speed on it. Javi in in Athens, you're going to be next. Welcome.
Hey.
Hi there.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I usually call on Fridays, but today I decided because of the debate. But, just listening to the debate and just overall politics, how it's going and everything, you can really tell it's, and this is for both left and right, it's more than just what we see. It's really spiritual, Ephesians 6:12, when Paul speaks about, we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, etc. But a lot of the issues that the Democrats were hitting on yesterday, I'm not saying that there's a correct formula to fix them, but a lot of it, if only we were going, if we were doing it through the Bible, I would say a lot of these issues would be fixed. For instance, poverty. A lot of people have a poverty mentality, and I just get reminded of the scripture Paul says. I'm a paraphrase. Man don't work, man don't eat.
Yeah.
Gun violence. Think about it. Guns don't, it's old cliche, but guns don't kill people. People kill people. And why are people killing people? Because they have evil in their heart, etc. And, you were just discussing about the pharmacy, drugs, and all that. A lot of it can be traced to the love of money. And what does the Bible say about that? The love of money is the root of all evil. And it is no coincidence that Jesus said you can only have two masters, me or mammon, or whatever.
Right. So there's another issue here. And listen, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I'm glad you raised that point with the Democrats. The fundamental issue here, and this goes to the speech I gave in Colorado this past weekend. The Democrats want the government to be the solution to everything. There is no room for churches. There is no room for nonprofits. Everybody's got to rely on the government. In fact, you've got Pete Buttigieg out there now. Listen to this clip from Pete Buttigieg. This is from the CNN town hall.
Just to be clear, do you believe that other religious and nonprofit institutions like colleges and homeless charities should lose their federal funding if they refuse to hire or serve LGBTQ people?
Yes, if they are discriminating, then they should not be doing it with federal dollars.
Okay.
So we've got to shut down, according to Pete Buttigieg, church-based charities that are helping the federal government if those charities, those faith-based charities, won't hire gay, lesbian, transgender people. We in this country, our First Amendment says that we have a freedom of religion in this country, freedom to exercise our religion, By the way, there are a number of members of the Supreme Court who believe that the old case, it was a Scalia decision, actually, that treated freedom exercise as equivalent to freedom of speech issues. And they want to revisit this, that you've got to be able to live out your faith and life. And for Christians, that means maintaining biblical orthodoxy and maintaining their faith. And Buttigieg is saying, shut them all down, punish them. There's no room for religion in this country with the Democrats, and that's part of their problem. Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here across the state of Georgia. The phone number, if you want to be a part of the program, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. It is 11:06 a.m. my time. If you're listening to us in delay, that's where I'm getting this number. The Dow Jones Industrial Average now up 355 points. The NASDAQ up 144 points. The New York Stock Exchange up 179 points. Apple itself is up 8 points today. Yay, as someone who owns some Apple stock, yay. Joining me to talk about all this and the market frenzy over the last couple of days from Dynamic Money, Chris Burns is live from New York City. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm so live that I'm in the back of a cab. So if you hear beeping or cursing, it's not me. I'm good for radio.
That is quite all right. So what's your take on the market dive? You were actually on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange yesterday with Cheddar TV, I saw.
I was, and it's been a fascinating few days. So the point that we almost lost 2,000 points in the Dow the first 2 days of this week, which is the biggest two-day point loss ever. We always have to remember that as the Dow rises overall, point losses aren't as significant as percentages, but still, that was a significant loss. And I would say to people, when you wake up this morning and you see the market up, that's great, and it could continue to go up. But just remember, some of that, too, is a whole lot of people going, wow, there was such a big drop, now's a good time to buy. Mm-hmm. So the underlying economic conditions, the underlying concerns about the coronavirus haven't changed at all. We don't have any new information that's transforming the market in some way. We're just all waiting to kind of see what happens with the coronavirus, and that's created a whole lot of uncertainty and anxiety in all of global markets right now.
Now, if you're at or near retirement and you're in the stock market, what should you be doing right now? Getting out of the stock market?
Yeah, no, actually, no. Don't waste this week. That is the number one advice, because here's the deal. No one knows. The head of the IMF just came out and said there is really no way for us to give any prediction about what this is going to look like or turn into. It could be a global pandemic, as you've seen all these news articles saying, or as Larry Kudlow, the president's chief economic advisor, said yesterday, hey, it's pretty much airtight. We have it locked down in the U.S. We're going to be fine. All right, so you get these conflicting messages of how bad is this. But here's the key. If you're sitting feeling anxiety or feeling uncertainty, and there's tension that comes along with that, don't waste that. And here's what I mean. If this turns out to be just fine, great. If it turns out to be terrible, that's awful. But regardless, don't forget this feeling, because we're sitting on almost 500% growth in the market over the last decade, over the last bull market. Now is a very important time to go not be complacent and go, hey, everything's going to keep being fine because it's already been fine. Now is the time to say, wow, something will come along, whether it's this or something else, and it will impact the market dramatically. Have I changed my risk tolerance to really reflect where I'm at in terms of retirement? So if I'm sitting on 95% equities right now and I'm 65 years old, it's a good reminder, it might be time to tone this back now to a healthy place where when the market does really drop, I don't end up really hurting my retirement chances.
Now, we have seen, and you and I have talked about this, you've had this phenomenal bull market for a long time, and people have been thinking its run has got to be over at some point soon. No one knows when it's going to be. There have been a lot of people more and more nervous about whether or not the bull market is coming to an end. And I do wonder if there's almost a psychological effect of if, for example, we are able to dodge the bullet with the coronavirus, people say, oh, well, no, let the good times roll again. And suddenly you have a more resurgent bull market that lulls people back into confidence before the correction comes. I mean, what is your sense on this, that the bull market can't last forever?
Right, it can't. The problem is, and this really is a problem, is that the longer it goes, the more every single event that happens makes us think it's the event, quote unquote, the major thing that's going to drop. And so truly, a few weeks ago, people were freaking out because it was going to be World War III with Iran. And then a few weeks before that, we weren't going to get the Phase 1 trade deal done with China, and so the market was going to tank. you'll notice the media now, and it translates into how we feel because we're watching the media. Every single potential, significant issue in the market makes us worry that's the one. But here's the problem. Last year, the S&P was up over 30%, but we still had 5 days where it dropped 2%, at least. And any of those days could have been something that the dominoes fall and the market really, really drops. And so it's important to remember that these are going to come along no matter what all the time. Now, this one's a little more concerning to me just because we have so little reliable information. But the information we have coming out of China is questionable at best, and so we're getting a better feel for it as it spreads around the world. And if it ends up being something that we can't contain, that is concerning for a number of reasons. But no one knows that yet. So the best way to treat this right now is as a reminder that something will come along. It could be 5 years from now, it could be 2 months from now, or it could be this. And you need to make sure that you're already prepared for it. Even if it means you get maybe lower returns than you would have if the market shoots up, you have the peace of knowing I'm not destroying my retirement when that next recession or drop or bear market hits. So,
well, is that part of the trick of it is finding how you get peace of mind and being willing to say, okay, the market's roaring right now, but I'm going to sleep well at night because I got enough in my retirement fund?
Yeah, and it's really how much risk am I taking? That is the number one issue. It's not take all of my money and go to gold or go to treasuries, which you see people do right now. Even though that's attractive, the reason that's attractive is because we long for certainty. And so when we sit in the tension of going, nobody knows, when the head of the IMF comes out and the National Monetary Fund and says, hey, we don't have enough information to make any sort of predictions on this, then we're all left just going, I don't know what's going to happen. And so I would like to change that. So I'll make this significant change. And in the short term, I'll feel better. But selling everything you have right now is like selling all your clothes at a garage sale. You're not getting what they're worth. And so the key is really going, can I adjust to a healthy place in the stock market where I'm taking a risk that I know, even in the worst case scenario, isn't going to wreck my retirement? And now I feel confidence, and I'm going to stick with that regardless of what the market does today or tomorrow.
Well, in full disclosure, for those of you just tuning in, I'm talking to Chris Burns from Dynamic Money, who fills in for me as my financial advisor, and he wouldn't let me yesterday. I proposed cashing out my 401k and buying lottery tickets, and he wouldn't let me. Using the argument that my wife would be mad at us.
I said, if you include me in it, like a Nicolas Cage, it could happen to you moment, then I'm up for it. I just think your wife might come after both of us.
That is very true. She would, and she can be scary at times. Now, I want to ask you, you are in New York City, and my understanding is you will actually make an appearance on Fox Business tonight.
Yeah, so I'll be on Kennedy tonight at 9 p.m. I'm sure we'll be hashing all this out. And then actually we'll be on Fox and Friends tomorrow morning at right about 7 a.m. So plenty of chances to talk about all of the excitement. And I think we'll have, again, more information by the end of today, whether we see kind of a reprieve like we see right now where the market's growing a little bit and we all take a deep breath, or does something turn around in the afternoon, which is what happened yesterday. The market opened up yesterday and then was down significantly by the end of the day.
When the CDC came out and said, look out, pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, what information do we not have yet that we might have in 4 hours? Who knows? But the biggest thing for people to know is take a deep breath. Don't focus on going to safety. Focus on going to what is the right risk for me in my situation that I can stick with, not just through the coronavirus, but through whatever else pops up in 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, and if the coronavirus spreads, we'll have to start talking about estate planning too. I kid. Listen, good luck tonight on TV and tomorrow morning on Fox and Friends, and we will see you back here at some point soon.
Hey, thanks, Eric. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Chris Burns, Dynamic Money. The hour is not sponsored by Dynamic Money, but they also sponsor the show. He's a good friend. He literally is my financial advisor. If you guys need a financial planner, advisor, someone to help you with family budgeting, totally give Chris a call at Dynamic Money. You can go to dynamicmoney.com, as a matter of fact, to get more information about Dynamic Money, and they'll help you with family budgeting. They will look at all of your finances finances and your debts and see if they can help you restructure to get out of debt. That's what they did for us. That's how I got to know Chris. Had a bunch of credit card debt, and he was like, you have so much equity in your house. If you did this, you could pay off your credit cards. And man, my house payment hasn't even changed. It was great. So they do all that stuff, but primarily they also deal with your retirement, and they are 100% fee-based. They do not do a commission, so they will take a fee if they manage your retirement. Everyone does. I think it's 1% or 0.99%, some such. But they'll manage your investments if you want. If you don't want, they'll still, for a fee, look over everything and work with your investment advisor, your life insurance guy, your mortgage guy, and basically like a primary care physician for your finances. That's what Dynamic Money does. So dynamicmoney.com is the website. Chris Burns is the guy, and thanks to him for stopping by. You can see him on Kennedy Tonight, Fox and Friends, tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. Now, he mentioned the uncertainty in the coronavirus. A local hospital is advising its doctors, and someone sent me a email from the hospital. This is, what do we know about the coronavirus right now? There has been a pool of people being studied in Wuhan. 41 patients, and they've been releasing information on these 41 patients. 73% of them were men. The average, or the median age, was 49. 32% of them had underlying diseases. 98% of them had fever symptoms. 76% of them had cough. 44% had fatigue. 55% had shallow breathing 8 days in. 100% of them wound up having abnormalities in their chest CTs, pneumonia symptoms, and the fatality rate was 15%, which is higher than SARS but less than MERS. MERS was the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome that came out a number of years ago. So the mortality rate, about 15%. 6 of the 41 patients, 15%, died. The mortality rate was 10% for SARS and 37% for MERS. Now, they say there were no children or adolescents among the 41 people studied, but that's exposure bias. Has nothing to do with the rate of infections among younger people. Not many had upper respiratory symptoms. Not many people had GI symptoms. And what do we actually know for specific treatment? Not much yet. The 41 admitted patients received antibiotics and an antiviral medicine because it was also flu season. Corticosteroids were given. If severe community-acquired pneumonia was diagnosed, oxygen was administered as needed. Supportive care measures were administered. In practice, further evidence is needed to determine if systemic corticosteroid treatment is indicated. No antiviral treatments for either SARS or MERS were helpful. And they need ongoing studying of the antiviral medicine. And that's part of the problem here. And that's what has so many people spooked, is, as you heard Chris saying on the radio, that we don't actually have a lot of knowledge from China. China has dealt with this overwhelmingly, over 80,000 people infected in China. And we really don't know much about the ultimate effects of this. And there's an article in Axios today, and the headline is, "Why We Panic About Coronavirus But Not the Flu." If you're freaking out about coronavirus but you didn't get a flu shot, you've got it backwards. A novel outbreak will always command more attention than a common illness, and the coronavirus is a serious health threat. But our newfound hypervigilance against infections might be more helpful if we could redirect it towards influenza. The new strain of coronavirus has killed 132 people. Now, this was from the end of January, so it's now over 2,700 people. And by contrast, this year's flu season has killed 8,200 people in just January and February. 8,200 people have died of the flu, and 15 million people have been infected. James Lawler, an infectious disease. Actually, I'm sorry, that's wrong, because this was written January 29th. So this year's flu season, he's talking about January, actually. James Lawler, an infectious disease physician at the University of Nebraska, said pandemic viruses like the coronavirus cause more anxiety because there's not initial countermeasures like vaccines, antivirals, diagnostic tests. I can't talk. testing and monitoring systems, and those exist for the flu. The flu is not as new and headline grabbing because we see it every year. But the bottom line is that it's important to remember that if you're concerned about viruses, a lot of deaths every year are preventable, and the flu thus far still seems to be more deadly than the coronavirus. Now, that may change. The information we have is still preliminary. The information we have from China still has a lot of stuff that we don't think is very accurate. The Chinese are not being very transparent with any of us on the situation. The count right now, as of today, though, it's largely, frankly, stable, other than in South Korea, 1,261 people. China has 78,064, 2,768 deaths, 81,193 infected people. The United States is at 57 right now. Now, why is the United States at 57? We have 57 confirmed cases because 40 are from the Diamond Princess, 3 from Wuhan, 12 are travel-related, and 2 are person-to-person. And this is an important point, that we still only have 2 person-to-person infections. That being said, though, San Francisco has declared a coronavirus state of emergency on Tuesday. No residents have tested positive for the virus, but 3 people have been treated for it in city hospitals. There remain thus far only 2 known person-to-person cases of the coronavirus in the United States. San Francisco, by the way, has a lot of health problems. The coronavirus is not one of them. They do actually have very competent emergency personnel dealing with the issue in San Francisco. Because of the high population of Asians in San Francisco, they were getting ready for it pretty quickly, thinking people would come from China to San Francisco, and so they've been prepared. We'll see if that preparedness lasts for them.
News and in-depth analysis from News and analysis.
It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. The phone number, if you want to call in, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I hesitate to say this because I don't mean it critically. And I know people get so hypersensitive when I say stuff like this. You should see, too many people have my cell phone number and they call and complain. And I don't mean it that way. And I want to preface it that way. And I mean it lovingly. I was thinking about this last night. So in the last segment, I talked about the story in the National Journal, which is essentially the daily political publication that everyone in Washington reads. And it notes that Loeffler and Collins are neck and neck on a ballot test. Loeffler is now leading Doug Collins among people who consider themselves very conservative or religious conservatives or voters who approve of President Trump. The SBA list has now endorsed her. The Club for Growth has endorsed her. The National Republican Senatorial Committee is out to support her. Sean Hannity, Mike Huckabee, Andy Biggs, the House Freedom Caucus chairman, are supporting Collins. Loeffler's support comes from Kemp, Jeff Duncan, Chris Carr, the Attorney General, Newt Gingrich, myself, it's noted in the article. Her Senate colleagues have coalesced around her. 10 Senate Republicans have donated $72,500 to her. Mitch McConnell has her backing. Tom Cotton has her backing. Newt Gingrich is going to be out there campaigning for her, among others. And I'm watching the debate last night with Bloomberg, and I'm thinking, here is a billionaire who can't buy charisma and personality. I'm talking to Bloomberg, not Loeffler. Mike Bloomberg, can spend $500 million on an ad campaign and several $100 million on his campaign and $1 million on debate coaching, and you can't buy him charisma and personality. I'm sorry, but I listen to Mike Bloomberg on stage and I think, can someone who sounds like that get elected president? Short and with that very much New York accent, I don't know that is going to play well in Peoria and Des Moines.
You've said that President Xi Jinping of China is not a dictator and that he is responsive to his constituents and that the U.S. must cooperate with Beijing. How far does that go? Would you allow Chinese firms to build critical U.S. infrastructure?
No, I would not. And I think the Chinese government has not been open. Their press, the freedom of press does not exist there. Their human rights record is abominable, and we should make a fuss, which we've been doing, I suppose. But we make no mistake about it. We have to deal with China if we're ever going to solve the climate crisis. We have to deal with them because our economies are inextricably linked. We would not be able to sell or buy the products that we need. And in terms of whether he's a dictator, he does serve at the behest of the Politburo, of their group of people.
Their group of people who are handpicked by him, by the way. Do you really want to listen to him on the campaign trail? And that's one of the things it comes down to. You can buy your way onto a debate stage. You can buy votes. You can buy ads, but you can't buy charisma and personality. And I bring that up because it is a general consensus, and I'm not talking on a turn. It is a general consensus that while Loeffler's ad campaign introduced her overwhelmingly to the public in Georgia, her personality came across as stiff. And that she doesn't come across as comfortable in her ads, to the extent that some of the ads now have voiceovers of a clearly Southern male voice talking about Kelly Loeffler and all she's accomplished and all she's going to do and what a conservative hero she is. And that's fine. That's the way to do it. If I was her campaign consultant, I would advise doing that. But I would also advise trying to find a way for her to be comfortable. For her to come out of her shell, because it seems with Bloomberg, it doesn't strike me as Bloomberg has a shell to come out of, because he's a jerk to begin with. I mean, he just comes across as unpleasant and angry at all times. Loeffler comes across as hyper shy and overwhelmed right now. and trying to get her comfortable and trying to get her relaxed and trying to get her back in her own words that don't sound stiff is something they're going to have to do. But again, no amount of money can really buy that. You can get some good people to help. When I was, and I mentioned this before, when I was a campaign consultant, it's one of the things I had to do with a couple of clients. One in particular, who was very, very stiff on the campaign trail, did not was great one-on-one, an incredible politician one-on-one, but did not come across well in front of a crowd. Jeb Bush, Jeb Bush is actually, if you ever watch his interactions one-on-one with people on the campaign trail, or Mitt Romney even, they are incredible retail politicians one-on-one with individuals. But on a stage, in a commercial, in front of a large group, they're kind of stiff. They've gotten better over the years. And that's something the Loeffler folks have to be mindful of. And I know they are. And I know they're working on it. That's to some degree why they're limiting her availability right now is they're spending all their time working on that. And they've got to, and that's wise, that's smart. It's what they need to do. But it is also something that it strikes me when I think of Bloomberg, that Bloomberg thinks now he can come on stage and kind of command it because he's Mike Bloomberg, he's the mayor, and he can do this, and he can just say what he wants because he was the mayor of New York. I do have to tell you, he tried to claim that he gained his leadership abilities standing on the rubble of 9/11, which is just, it is a infuriating line. The New York Press Corps, I'm told by a reporter from the AJC, that the New York Press Corps audibly groaned when Bloomberg made that line. And that's going to be problematic. And then y'all the debate itself, it was a mess. Here's Norah O'Donnell with one good line against Bernie Sanders last night.
Good. Senator Sanders, the cost of your agenda. Yesterday, you released information about how you will pay for your major proposals, but not all of your details are clear. You proposed more than $50 trillion in new spending. You said Medicare for all will cost $30 trillion. But you can only explain how you'll pay for just about half of that. Can you do the math for the rest of us?
How many hours do you have?
2.
That's
the problem.
No.
Senator Sanders.
That's repeat. Yeah. Well, basically asking Sanders if he can do the math. That scored probably more points on Sanders than Mike Bloomberg tried to score on Sanders. Buttigieg, again, as I mentioned in the first hour, he had the strongest points against Sanders, but the whole thing was too chaotic for anyone to really be able to get a handle. The whole thing was too chaotic for anyone to really be able to engage and take on Sanders because the moderators, I don't even want to play any more clips of the debate because it was so chaotic. It's going to give us all a panic attack listening to everyone yell over the moderators and yell over each other and hog for time and raise their hands. I thought it was very funny. Pete Buttigieg kept his hand in the air half the night and they wouldn't call on him. And finally, he's like, I guess I'm going to have to talk over the old geezers to get my point, to go after Bernie Sanders. It was something. I don't want to stick on this. I do want to tell you that there is a story out, also in National Journal, but I've seen it elsewhere as well, in National Review and others. The Democrats have decided to declare Georgia a battleground state for 2020, and Texas as well. The Democrats believe they can pour money into Texas and Georgia. And you know what that means? You're about to start getting a lot more calls and mail. By the way, if you want to be a participant in polling, my buddy Logan Dobson has made this point before. The most powerful people on planet Earth are the people who have their cell phone number in their voter registration file because you are the people who will get the polls. If you want to become a powerful, influential influencer in American life, go update your voter registration file at your local county office and put your cell phone number with it. And you'll start getting polling calls. You will. because I get polling calls, and I can't actually take the polls because one of the disqualifying questions they ask is, are you a member of the media? And technically, as much as I hate to admit that I technically am, and they don't want to talk to me. It's like when the Nielsen folks call and they say, are you in broadcast? I'm like, yeah, I can't talk to you. Got to hang up now. The Nielsen folks, you're not allowed to talk. I actually had a Nielsen person show up at our door and had to explain to him. It's like, dude, I can't talk to you at all. Nielsen, they do the ratings for TV and radio, Nielsen families. They used to be just TV, and now they do TV and radio. It's like, I can't talk to you. Get off my porch. Poor people. He was flustered too. He wanted names of people. It's like, dude, I cannot do that. Go away. In any event, this entire thing is just it's farcical that the Democrats now think that they're going to pour money into Texas and Georgia. And here's the thing. Let me go back to the Buttigieg clip here. So I said I didn't want to play any more debate audio. I do need to play this because he makes a point. Again, this goes to the Texas-Georgia issue that we need to understand, because the Democrats, the establishment Democrats in the upper echelons of the Democratic Party, they understand this, and it's the base voters in the Democratic Party. It hasn't seemed to occur to them yet.
It was 30, then it was 17. It's an incredible shrinking price tag. At some point has said it is unknowable to even see what the price tag would be. Now there are new numbers going. I'll tell you exactly what it adds up to. It adds up to 4 more years of Donald Trump, Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House, and the inability to get the Senate into Democratic hands. The time has come for us to stop acting like the presidency is the only office that matters. Not only is this a way to get Donald Trump reelected, we got a House to worry about. We got a Senate to worry about. And this is really important. Look, if you want to keep the House in Democratic hands, you might want to check with the people who actually turned the House blue. 40 Democrats who are not running on your platform. They are running away from your platform as fast as they possibly can.
Yeah, listen. Lucy McBath in Georgia's 6th congressional district. She's one of the people Mike Bloomberg bought. She is endorsing Mike Bloomberg. Yeah. Don't boo me on that. This is Mike Bloomberg himself.
Mayor Bloomberg, please.
Let's just go on the record. They talked about 40 Democrats. 21 of those were people that I spent $100 million to help elect. All of the new Democrats that came in and put Nancy Pelosi in charge and gave the Congress the ability to control this president, I got them.
I got them. I bought them. That's what he wanted to say. He bought them. Lucy McBath here in Georgia as well. And she's going for him, of course, because he gave her money. Stacey Abrams has defended him. He's given her group $5 million. You've got this around the country where these Democrats who are in these swing districts are beside themselves at the thought of Bernie Sanders being the nominee. Why? Because suburban voters, given the choice between their 401k being wiped out in communism or being sustained by a guy they don't like, are going to go with the guy they don't like to protect their 401k. Stuff like that matters, and Buttigieg was right to call it out. The problem is you've got this growing movement of progressivism within the Democratic Party that doesn't care. They want the purity. Bring on the purity standards. Wipe out the Democrats, burn them, burn the heretics who don't want to advance the Green New Deal and socialism across the country. And they're willing to do it. They are willing to do it. And the establishment Democrats, the upper echelons of the party, they realize it. And the best they can do is like David Axelrod last night after the debate, saying, he's not really a socialist. He's actually a commie, David. The Democrats are going to have trouble keeping the House representatives. And, I mentioned this the other day. Fred Upton, he's the geriatric blue hair Republican congressman from Michigan who was set to retire. And he was retiring because there's no reason to stay because Nancy Pelosi is going to be speaker. And now Fred Upton to say, wait, you know what? I think I'm actually going to stick around and see what happens as Bernie Sanders becomes the Democratic nominee. They know. And there's nothing they can do to stop him at this point.
As both sides target Georgia for 2020. 37425.
Yesterday was Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, the day of debauchery around the world. And today is Ash Wednesday. People going, particularly Catholics, going to Mass today. They will have a cross finger painted on their forehead by a priest who takes the palm branches from Palm Sunday the year before. They burn them to get the ash for Ash Wednesday, typically. This is the start of Lent, Lenten period, a 40-day period. Why do this? And increasingly, a lot of denominations do this that don't have traditions of Lent, but have embraced it in a world where so many Christians now mirror the world around them. Why do Lent? Well, in the very early church, I mean, the real early church, the first 200 years after the death, 300 years after the death of Christ, before the Roman Empire and Constantine made it safe to be a Christian in the empire. You know, Christianity did not actually become the formal religion of the Roman Empire for well after Constantine, but Constantine, it became a Christian, and so a lot of people just by nature did. They wanted access to the emperor, so they converted. But there was the early church decided that you were going to probably die or at least be severely persecuted if you became a Christian as it began to spread through the Roman Empire. And they needed to come up with a way to teach people what it would actually mean for them to be a Christian. This was before there was a compiled Bible. They had the letters circulated throughout the Roman Empire to the early church. The traditor, you know where we get the word traitor from? It's from the word traditor. Some early Christians would trade their scripture for their lives to the Roman emperor. They would burn the scripture. These were the days circulated around. The letters from the apostles before a bound Bible had been formed. They had copies of the Gospels. They had copies of the letters of James and Jude and Peter and John and Paul. And the Romans would come hunting for them, and some would trade it in and to be burned to save their lives for free of persecution, and they were called the traditors. We get the word traitor from there. Well, because of all of this, the early Christians under Roman persecution decided they needed a 40-day period in the run-up to Easter to teach people what it would mean to be a Christian. And the reason 40 days, well, Jesus wandered in the wilderness for 40 days. Noah and his family were on the ark for 40 days. 40 days made sense. And so for 40 days, those who were thinking of becoming Christians would go through a rigorous education within the early church of what it meant to be a Christian, what they would suffer by being a Christian, but what they would gain by being a Christian. And on Easter Sunday, there would be lots of baptisms throughout the Roman Empire. After the Constantine made it acceptable to be a Christian and he himself converted, there was a huge conversion, and no one was going to be persecuted anymore for being a Christian. And there were people who had devoted themselves to the idea of persecution. You know, Ignatius, one of the early Christian fathers, wrote about essentially his pride of being persecuted, that it was a good thing to be persecuted. We should all want to be persecuted. It meant that we really were Christians. And nowadays, I've got a friend of mine who had a seminary professor said, if you've never been persecuted, you might not be a Christian. And there's some truth to that, but not in the way of the Roman Empire. Well, once everyone was a Christian, there was no reason for anyone to worry about persecution. And how do you actually tell you're a Christian? And that led to the rise of monasticism, people who would give up everything and go join a convent or an abbey and go live in the wilderness as a monk. Monk comes from the Greek monos, one. They would go live by themselves, solitary existences, to prove that even though they weren't being persecuted anymore, they would lead difficult lives to glorify God. The Catholic Church, the early church, after persecution, decided to keep the 40-day tradition. And as it spread across Europe, it adopted the name Lent. It became a springtime thing in the run-up to Christmas, or in the run-up to Easter, where you would still spend giving up something, just as Jesus in the wilderness gave up things as he wandered in the wilderness and was tempted and tried. You as a Christian would, in those 40 days, give things up and work on your faith and spend time in prayer and fasting and meditation, echoing like Jesus, echoing the life of Jesus. So it all comes from that 40-day period in the early Roman Empire where the early church decided to educate Christians in a pagan empire who would probably die for conversion, what exactly they would gain and what exactly they would give up. Now, I want to tell you this. I always do a Good Friday show on my radio program in Atlanta, and this will be my first Easter doing this show, and I intend to do a Good Friday show here. Now, what does that mean? Well, we've got 40 days to prepare, get ready for it, a little less than that, actually. And it is a time for us to look at what Good Friday means in the larger expanse of our life. And we will do that in Good Friday. What I'd like to do is put on an open call for churches. If you are in Georgia, you got a church, you do good music, and you want me to listen to it and see if I can weave it into the show for Good Friday, let me know. You can drop us a line, eric@theresurgent.com. And I will listen, I try not to be too religious on this program. I am an evangelical, but it's more of a political news show. But there will be topics that we weave in over the next few weeks as we think about these and the run up to the most important anniversary of the most important weekend in human history. And even atheist scholars agree it is the most important weekend in human history.